Wake up, buy here, pay here people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Morning, everybody. Happy Monday.
Hello from Utah.
Yeah. It's September 11th, so it's like a National Remembrance Day. So
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
To prepare you for the fact that I was going to ask you, I don't remember where you were on September 11th.
I was at my mom's house. Yeah, I was at my mom's house. Kids were in the other room, and I just sat in my mom's bedroom and watched.
Yeah.
Glued. We had the kids in the other room watching a cartoon because they were really little.
Sure.
I mean, Thomas and Andrew, the oldest ones, were like 2, 3, 4, somewhere right around there. And yeah.
I was with a client in Northern Illinois. We all just stood around the TV, just glued to the TV, and just had a hard time peeling our way back and going to work,
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things too for me that they say never forget, and that's a good thing because it was just such a the rose side or the good side of this is it just brought people together in such a beautiful way, and it was really, really lovely. So so those of you who have some ties to that, we just wanted to honor you.
Sure.
So that was yeah.
So
okay.
Nothing really, we don't have anything firmed up on the upcoming episodes of the morning show.
Yeah,
we've got plenty of things to talk about. We just haven't decided and scheduled some topics yet. So
well, what we're going to be talking about today, though, Jim has spent a couple of big blocks and days talking about, Oh, look, Anna Maria Beck. Hey,
nice.
Hey, Anna Maria. Catching you live. Always watch the replays late at night. So
good to have
welcome.
you here live.
We're glad to have you here.
I'm glad you can hear us. We were having a terrible time getting connected this morning. We're having some. Don't name the name of the company, Michelle.
Okay, I won't name the name of the company, but we had someone come out and look at our internet and cable stuff. We don't ever watch television, so we've had cable boxes since we moved here, never used them. And so he went through and got everything all hooked up and supposedly fixed the internet, but I didn't find that it was super fast this morning.
We're
okay. So what do we have coming up? We've got
obviously we got Marietta conferences the 24th through the 26th.
Well, actually, policy is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this next week.
Okay. So you got policy.
So a lot of people are going to be heading down there and doing that. Yeah.
Good stuff. And then Marietta the 24th through 26th, and that'll be I think it's a Sunday, Tuesday. So double check that on your calendar. But if you haven't booked that, especially if you're in the Northeast, you probably want to get to that conference.
Yeah, it's one of those conferences too where you don't have to be a member of Marietta. I think just a member of the national organization through your state association to get the same pricing. Yeah. So that's a great deal. And the ticket prices are like really, compared to a lot of others, they're really, really inexpensive. So,
Tommy Brandis, I appreciate the invitation. I can officially say now I cannot be there. I had last told Tommy about 25% chance, and I can now say my son is coming for a visit.
We haven't seen him for like a a minute. So
it's unfortunate I can't be there, but we certainly expect you to have a good conference. In
any way that we can support virtually.
Always
let us know.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we also have LHPH coming up in October 12th, 13th, and 14th, and we will be there for that in San Diego. This is for any of our listeners that are lease here, pay here, or thinking about adding leasing to
a lot of you might want to have a look at
that. It's been Jim's done a lot of research into and comparing, and actually is working on a tool to act side by side what these things look like. and it's pretty exciting. But we're looking forward to that. We will be broadcasting live throughout the day on the 13th, and it will be after speakers finish their address, and we're going to be doing some interviewing with them and talking about some of the things that they discuss. So, any other announcements? No.
I don't
Okay.
think so.
All right, guys. Here we get into the meat.
Oh yeah,
There's
data.
meat. This is like data nerd.
Yeah. So I told
many
Michelle
hours.
this is something that it came up in a Facebook conversation last week, and I remember thinking this is a tough thing. Like I remember as a dealer, agonizing over that same thing. Like so, today's conversation, for those who don't know, is really on making a judgment about wholesale versus finance. When you've got some cars that are aging, and especially right now, when many of us own cars for more than what the current market value is, then there's a decision that we have to make about wholesale. Should I wholesale it or should I finance it? And I've had some conversations with some of our clients recently where they own a lot of cars for more than current wholesale value.
Yeah.
And that happens. I mean, we make mistakes and we overspend on something or whatever. We spend too much in recon, and now our actual cost in the car is more than its market value. So the question is, what should I do? One of the things I want to talk about before we get into the spreadsheet is with this client recently, I was talking through something it doesn't come up very often. And so I was saying, let's talk about what I call mental write-downs. So what I mean,
we were talking about this morning,
Yeah.
Because Jim said that he's like, there's a physical write down and then there's a mental write down.
Yeah. So let's just pick some numbers. Let's say that you have a car that you own for $7,500 and it's got a wholesale market value of $6,000. That's the most it's going to do, at an auction or whatever. So that's our reality. We own the car for too much. And so now the question is, with this client, we were talking about how to move through some aged units. Some of the stuff we own for too much. You could go in and physically write it down, make an adjustment.
Go into your DMS.
And which would flow through to your accounting, and you basically adjust your wholesale value, and it's a loss. You write it down on your inventory. And some dealers have a practice of this, certainly retail dealers would. Certainly franchise dealers, but in buy here, pay here, we're pretty independent. We don't have to do it if we don't want to, but you could go through and write down your inventory quarterly, annually, adjust it. Some dealers do it at the end of the year as a way to, reduce income. But basically, I'm saying that whether you go in and write that car down $1,500 from $7,500 to its current real value of $6,000, you could do that, or you could just do a mental adjustment in your head and know that I really only own the car. Treat it like I own it for $6,000.
Okay.
And that's important because we're going to do what we're going to do with it. We're either going to wholesale it, and if some wholesaler comes up and offers us $6,000, are we going to treat it like we own it for $6,000, or are we going to treat it like we own it for $7,500? Because what you own it for is really irrelevant in terms of what it's going to sell for. And so now the question becomes, if I do a mental write down, I price it accordingly. I put a down payment on it, selling price, finance it, according to what I mentally own it for this. Now the problem becomes, and I think I didn't get it listed on, I listed several assumptions when we get to the spreadsheet part, but among the things that happen here is that if you're a 20 group member, for example, well, your cash and deal numbers are going to look strange on your composite for the month because you sold some cars that you own for $7,500, you own for $7,500. You priced them as though you owned them for $6,000. So your cash and deal is heavy, your margin is low. It's going to look weird on your analytics. When you're measuring KPIs, it's just going to look weird. So that's the problem with just doing a mental write down, if you want to call that a problem. It's just when you're doing your own analysis, and I can relate to this. Like I personally didn't like to pollute my numbers by, for example, the other thing that comes up from time to time, and heard everybody talk about it forever, is financing even wholesale units. Like I used to do some of that, but it kind of was problematic. You had to separate it from the rest of your retail business, or it would, make your numbers look strange. And so that was something that would come up from time to time. But I think in this particular case, we're trying to really drill down and help dealers decide, should I wholesale this car and take a loss, or should I finance it and experience less margin, I'll actually have, at least using the example I gave, I would have more actual cash in deal. If I did a mental adjustment, then I would have, let's call it a mental cash in deal, right? It's like I don't really have that much in it, but it is what it is. Like it's just simple math. And so this is why I say I just took some time on Saturday morning to run through the math, and let's just do a side-by-side analysis and help dealers decide. We can share that if you want.
All right. You need to share your screen.
Oh yeah, I have that.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, give me a moment.
All right.
It's coming, folks.
It is. When Jim came in this morning, I was singing some Billy Joel, and so he asked me, because he's like, "Do you want to change your screen?" He asked me if I was going to sing, and no, but I'll do a little, talk around here to add up a little bit. Okay, here we are. Okay.
It's coming. And I did suggest on the comments this morning, and when I put the thing out there, that we. This is this episode that you might want to catch on video. So
yeah, again, if you are listening to this on our just regular podcast on Apple, Spotify, any of the other ones that pick up those ones, you might want to go to YouTube and watch this.
So you can see the spreadsheet. So you can watch there's quite a bit of stuff that's happening in the spreadsheet. So we're going to go through that today. But let me get this. Let's see if I can get this zoomed in just a little bit more.
Awesome.
And it's just important stuff for us to understand kind of what's happening here. So I've got some numbers teed up in the thing, and I'm using my own cash flow modeling tool that has assumptions pages. And so I just pull over assumptions from those pages. But most of what happens here is happening right here. So let me run through some assumptions first. I've got some.
Make it a little bit bigger if you don't mind.
I'll try. Yeah, it's not letting me get to that while I'm sharing. Okay. So unfortunately, this may be, I can maybe zoom over here. Let me try one more thing. Because I want folks to be able to see.
Yeah, it's not going to be very effective if you can't actually see the stuff. So there we go. That's much better. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
So,
now we're in business.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's look at these numbers. I basically we can pick any numbers, any of these numbers in yellow, we can change those out and put in whatever we want, have it do the math. So the first thing I've got is let's say we typically have our wholesale reconditioned value is $8,500.
So that's after reconditioning. So this is what you bought it for plus whatever you've put into it.
Yeah, and I think when you work these kind of models, there are certain variables that you need to lock in, because when you have too many variables moving at one time, you can't learn anything.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm suggesting here is one of the things I'm sort of locking in is that this dealer, for example, would typically have as their typical car an $8,500 cost car. So in other words, if they're buying the same kind of cars they always buy, and most of their inventory is about an $8,500 current wholesale value, then they're going to have it at that cost. They're going to have a certain price on it. And now I'm just saying we would expect that this car would be typical to the rest of our inventory, and we own it for about $8,500 is what we anticipate it would sell for. But we own it for $10,300. So I said that a little backwards, but basically you own it for $10,300, and its real wholesale value is $8,500. Again, I'm just picking numbers. You could throw anything in here. But now the question becomes, and so this top section is a wholesale analysis only. So all of this up right here in blue is just looking at, okay, if I were to just wholesale that car, then what does that look like? Because often, and I can share that, often when I'm working with my clients, I'll say, we need fresh inventory. And so if we can move this car as it is, do a mental write down and move it, adjust down payment, adjust selling price, and move it on through, that's fine. If there's some other reason it's not selling, that's a different conversation. If we kind of have to wholesale it because it's had its opportunity to finance and hadn't financed. So we just need to figure out, you might have to get it gone.
And I think that we talked about that last week.
Yeah, it's kind of a different episode. It's a different conversation. But in this case, if we assume that the car will finance and we just need to, decide, are we going to finance it or are we going to wholesale it? Then this is basically what we're trying to analyze. So let's look. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I know when Jim took me through these Saturday, something like that. I really appreciated that he added in there, because, sometimes we don't think about that, but you're going to have certain fees if you send it to the auction that are just going to happen regardless of whether or not you buy a car to replace it. But if you buy a car to replace it, you're doubling them all. Pretty much.
Anybody that's listening in live, if you have different numbers, like I put an outbound transportation fee, I threw $150 in there. A sell fee at the auction. If you sell the car and you're just selling it and replacing it with something of similar value, let's just go through that kind of scenario. I'm just selling it for $8,500. I'm buying something else for $8,500. And so what's my outbound transport fee? I got a sell fee. I got to pay to buy fee on what I use to replace it.
Well, the auction houses need to make money from the buyers too. Yeah.
And then you got to transport the other car back potentially. So if you have those fees, if there's somebody listening to the broadcast, you want to throw in the comments there what those numbers
around 700 is what we're.
So that's a factor, right? If you wholesale, obviously you got inbound and outbound fees. So that's definitely going to be a factor. Good morning, Tyler Simmons. And so that's what I'm really kind of thinking about here is how do we make a judgment about whether it makes more sense to just turn it, replace it, have fresh inventory. Yeah. So before I dig too much deeper into those, I want to go to the bottom down here. I've got several assumptions loaded at the bottom that I want to talk through. Here's some selling price numbers. You've got APR. You've got sales tax. You've got some other fees and dock fees. So
these are if you're going to sell it on the lot.
This is financing.
This is if you're going to finance
so these are the finance assumptions, which I'll take you through. But before we get too deep in any one of these, on wholesale, I said it assumes immediate replacement at the target cost and recon. That's getting cut off there, but basically that's what it says is on wholesale again assumes immediate replacement at target cost and target recon. Okay, so that means you're going to experience your profit and loss right in that same month probably. And then on wholesale, it assumes 1 month in turn for recon. So in other words, I'm assuming I'm going to sell a replacement vehicle, but I'm going to take this car and wholesale it, and it assumes I allow a full month for reconditioning the car and making it available for sale. Most of you are saying, I wish I could turn them in a month, but I allowed 1 month.
That's another show. Yeah.
In both scenarios, I assume that the payments begin the month after the car is financed, okay, not in the same month. And on both scenarios, I assume that both notes perform for the entire period. So we just did a simple
when you say both notes, it's like we're going to be measuring if you took that unit, wholesaled it, bought a new one, and then financed that. It's like the difference between like replacing the unit wholesale and what you would make from that with these kind of time frames, a month and then all that, or keeping the unit, pricing accordingly and getting it out.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
That's right. So again, there are several things that I pull from assumptions page, which I'll take you over there when it gets to that point and I'll show you. But there's some other considerations, and that's the fresh factor. Like, we have to ask ourselves, if the car's sitting there aging, we own it for too much, why hasn't it financed up to now? Is that because of perception of the sales team, the sales manager? Is it the customer perception?
I mean,
there's a lot
it's
of things
probably factored all of those things in.
And we talked about before that, if it doesn't matter if it's clean and in good shape and it's a nice color, and for whatever reason, if it's been passed over for 90 plus days and all of the other stuff is financing instead of this one, if it's been priced similarly, then
and let me this is a psychology kind of thing with your sales team, that when new stuff comes off the truck, when it's delivered, the sales team is excited about the new inventory, and they're like looking at the stuff and they're seeing what can we sell, what little features does this car have, how slick does it look, and they're doing their mental stuff about, this is a cool car, and oh my gosh, I love the fresh inventory. And so when someone lands on the lot, which ones are they excited about? And they're going to say, hey, we just got this.
Yeah.
And it becomes something that's also part of the excitement of, hey, we just got this in and it's not going to last. You need to, or, hey, we've had this one on the lot for a year. And, and it's, you can tell by the key tags and all of that, and not as excited about it because it's just like, it hasn't jazzed anybody else up. And so the sales team, I mean, this is basically basic psychology.
And that's, and there's a shame on us element to that because we know the car's been there for, 6 months to a year, but the customer doesn't know that unless we somehow, make it a thing. So, so it's really, the point is, there's this freshness factor that's hard to factor into what we're doing here. But for today, it's just simple math. It's side-by-side math. What does it look like for us both so this top section is a cash flow analysis. The middle section is profit analysis. And the last section would be asset or balance sheet analysis. What's the impact to each of these things when we go through each scenario? So let's look at wholesale first.
So you've taken it to the auction. You've replaced the unit with something that, it's the $8,500 unit that it's, basically the same kind of thing. And so, and you've got a month sitting in recon and now we financed it. We sold it.
No, we will yet eventually, but first I want to break down this first month. So when we sell the aged unit, it sells for $8,500. That's its value, right? And then we experience those fees, and then we use the $8,500 and we replace another unit. I'm allowing recon in there. Let's say you bought it for $7,000 and spent over $1,500 reconditioning the car, but you're going to own this replacement car for the $8,500 that you collected at the auction. Okay. So from that standpoint, that cash part is a wash. We're just replacing it with a fresh unit that we own at the current market value, and we experience those fees. So for that month at the auction, we're negative $700. We liquidated that car. We experienced those fees, and we're negative $700. Now in the next month, again, I allowed a month. So in the next month, we finance the car, and I've got a $1,500 down payment loaded in there. So if we finance it here and then payments start in month 3, then that's what that would look like from a cash flow standpoint. Okay, so this is giving a running balance down here on the cash balance. So it's saying, okay, we were negative $700, now we collect $1,500 down payment. So now in month 2, we're positive $800 related to that unit, if you will. Okay, so we wholesaled the one unit, replaced it. Now, the profit and loss analysis, according to that, is we suffered an $1,800 loss when we liquidated the car. Okay, so that's very real to us. Now we turn around and we finance the replacement vehicle at full retail, full markup. Okay, so yes, we experienced a wholesale loss, and that's real cash. And now we profited from the financing of the new unit at a full markup. So, obviously in this scenario, the financing of the replacement unit, those numbers look consistent with the rest of our numbers in our composite. If you want to think of it that way, if you're a 20 group member, for example. So now if I go into the asset analysis, let's look at that. Well, what happened? Our inventory was reduced by 10.3. That's what we owned that car for. We acquired a new unit, so it went back up by 8,500, and then we suffered a $700, cash loss, or cash on hand went down by that amount.
So it's about $2,500.
$2,500 negative in that month, and then in the next month we have notes receivable. I'm sorry, this is our asset position. So we're $2,500 negative in terms of assets as a result of all those transactions. Okay, so then the assets in the second month, we financed the car, we've got a new note, and so the assets are there. So that's what the wholesale looks like. So if anybody sees anything there that they have questions about, throw them in the comments there, and we'll try to address them here as we go. And now moving into the finance scenario, same basic scenario. We're taking the same car, opening cash balance, I'm plugging in 0, and we have no fees associated with moving the car back and forth to the auction. We finance it immediately, and we get that cash down. So we're in a cash balance of $1,500. I'm going to give you the side-by-side here in just a minute, but let me take you through the rest of this. Now, profit and loss versus wholesale here, you can see you've got the profit from the finance sale, which is reduced. We own the car for less. I think this is using a $14,995 selling price, so I'll show you that at the bottom. But we have less markup because we didn't write the car down, right? So we financed it at a regular price, and we had less gross profit. So our financing is shown there. Okay, so profit and loss, and then the asset. Obviously, we suffer. Our inventory goes down by 10.3 because that's what we own this particular car for that we finance. Our receivables go up by 14.8. Our cash on hand, we collect a down payment, and so we're there. So let me take you out here and show you month number 12. This is the part where we need kind of a drum roll. Yeah. Thank you. So it actually looks like at the 12-month mark, using, again, the scenarios that I've got, car for $8,500 cost, we own it for 10.3. But even if we finance it versus wholesale, what this says is that from a cash perspective, we're actually $1,700 better in 12 months. So this is the way I chose to look at it. Let's jump out to 12 months and let's look and see how does that compare. From again, a pure cash perspective, we should be $1,700 better off. A couple things happened. We didn't experience the fees at the wholesale auction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we also financed the car immediately, which meant we started earning.
So versus wholesale, versus at the same point, if you had taken it to the wholesaler, where we're at, if you kept it in-house and sold it and got it out, this is where you would be on your cash.
You'd be $1,700 better off in cash in 12 months. Okay. So now profit and loss analysis on the P&L side, not much different. We're about $258 difference. Again, I'll just remind everybody, there's a 1 month delay in the financing. If we went and wholesale the car and bought it back and replaced it and it financed in a month, there's a 1 month delay when the payments start, right? So now we're at $258 difference in P&L. So we have $258 more profit when we just finance it. And now from an asset perspective, we're actually about $1,342 higher in assets across that same time period. So I also did it to 24 months, but I think this 12 months is the most relevant. I mean, obviously it's going to continue to track the way that it tracks, but across the 24 months, and from a cash basis, we're $2,300 plus better off. We're only $200 difference from a P&L standpoint. Profitability, it's only $200 difference. So maybe
and that's about the same as it was before. It's actually less.
And now you've got $2,100 of difference in terms of assets.
So if you do the finance, you're not marking it down? Are you marking it down on the lot to move it faster? It's the same price.
That's something else where those variables got a little too tricky if you
start moving too many variables. If you're trying to move an aged unit and you can mark it down so that it becomes more, you could easily just eat that difference up just by a markdown.
Yeah.
And so then it's sixes.
Yeah, I think that's the question is, because we hear dealers saying, should I mark it down? Well, typically in my experience, what we recommend to our clients is, look, you typically can move them based on down payment. You and I always talk about, you've heard me talk about down payments, what moves the volume typically, and it's usually not the selling price. However, one thing that we've seen in this COVID period is that dealers have taken what used to be a 10-year-old car with 120,000 miles that had a certain price on it, and now they own that car for more. So they're taking that same car, same profile of car that they had before, and they're trying to put the same markup on it. So it means higher selling price. Okay.
Yeah.
But the question really becomes when you've got a car that's aged, and that's what we're really analyzing here, is if the car's sitting there aged and you own it for too much, what's keeping it from moving? Is it and again, you heard me say, I don't much care. Like I want it gone. So I think the question becomes, is it price that's keeping the car from moving? Is it down payment that's keeping the car from financing? Why aren't customers choosing this particular car? Obviously, you can feature them. A lot of dealers out there do manager special or whatever and feature them. But I'm saying without reducing the price, if it's comparable to other cars in your inventory,
but that's sold, if you're keeping it the same, and let's just say the windfall came in and you got your sales team excited about the car, and it's now it's going to sell for what it is that you're sitting on the lot. There's a lot of factors there that are like, would that really be the case that something that sat there for 6-9 months, whatever, that all of a sudden someone's going to land on the lot and want it.
Right.
And it's also assuming that you really can get your team excited about the unit. And so, when I'm looking at that, this is just my, I'm married into buy here, pay here.
You learned a lot.
So when I'm looking at this is I'm like, okay, so you decrease the down payment. That eats up $1,000. You got your down payment now at $500. That right there is it's okay. Where I'm
Sure.
looking at this, just take it to the wholesale. Take it and wholesale it. Get it off the lot. Get something new, because that is, when you think about how your team feels about units that are arriving on a truck.
Yeah.
Versus, and so this, I think that for me, that would be the deciding factor. Because the numbers, it's if you had a windfall and sold that unit today versus taking it to the auction, getting it replaced even at a loss,
right,
you're going to be better off putting a new unit on the lot. That's my perspective.
Yeah. So this is an interesting look for this on a future morning show, because as you talk about this, I'm realizing we really should do an inventory analysis of some clients and see. And by the way, if you got dealers listening, if you want us to analyze yours and you have, I would say we really need to have a dealer who's got a volume of at least 40, 50 sales a month. And so if you've got that kind of volume and you want to have us analyze, what we can do is I'd love to analyze of cars that sell, what percentage of them are selling of a certain age? Because typically what dealers do is that like you said, the transport comes in, the fresh stuff comes in, the sales team gets excited about it. That's the stuff they promote, seems like. And so we tend to sell more of the fresh stuff, which means the aging stuff just gets older. And so we got to have a strategy for that. And this is really kind of breaking that down.
Well, and I would say, okay, again, I married into Buy Here, Pay Here. And so the views of Michelle do not reflect the views of Jim.
I love it, yeah.
But maybe part of the strategy of dealerships that are moving 40 or 50 cars a month is that they are freshening up their lots all the time.
Well, they may not be. And here's why. I mean, it can be the same with a dealer selling 10 a month as is with 50. I mean, you have a certain size inventory. If the fresh stuff is selling, which is often the case, the fresh stuff tends to sell first.
Yeah.
And the aging stuff. So we talked about in a prior episode, this idea of making a second mistake, because the question, the question comes up about if these cars have aged, is it because we owned them for too much and we made a second mistake by setting a high down payment on them to try to keep our cash and deal, within policy? This is the part that I mean about a mental write down. I own the car for 10.3, but it really should own it for 85. I make a second mistake by holding out for too much down payment because I'm trying to make my cash and deal numbers fit. So if I make a mental write down to that in that car to 8,500, I just treat it like it's 8,500. I price it the same and get it going. Then this number suggests you're going to be fine. You're going to, these numbers suggest you're going to,
and numbers don't lie. I mean, And so again, the sales psychology, how does the team feel about the vehicles? Measure how long it takes before your sales team becomes disenchanted with something that has landed on the lot, because that might be your trigger.
Pretty hard to measure.
Well, I mean,
but I would certainly, if I were a sales manager, I would sit with my team and get a feedback. Why hasn't this particular age unit sold? What's your feedback? What's your perspective? When's the last time you showed it? When's the last time we had a test drive? It's like, why isn't it getting visibility?
What do you think? I mean, when you're as a former dealer, how long should it take for new inventory to turn?
90 days at the most. You're talking to somebody who used to turn inventory more than once monthly.
Okay. So a vehicle that's sitting, a vehicle that's sitting on the lot 30 days is going to start having those conversations. What's the problem with the car? What's the And so 30 days. Now, just from my experience with the dealers that we work with, there's a lot of dealers out there that have units that are much older than 30 days. And so that's a good number of having that conversation with your sales team. Sure. But if you look at running, where really will you be financially on all the different pieces? And it's like, yeah. So Tyler popped in and said,
experienced sales manager.
The manager should be experiencing inventory just as the sales associate is, looking at the pictures taken, detail that was completed on it, et cetera. Oh, absolutely.
And drivability, right, Tyler? So
Yeah.
you got to get out and get behind the wheel
Yeah.
and make sure it drives. Because it could be when on test drive, it's got some weird groan that nobody's paying attention to. And so, it could be that's why the cars get passed over.
Yeah.
But really, what we're really trying to analyze is let's assume all the cars are in great condition. So it's not a condition that's because we obviously know as dealers how to deal with that if it's a condition problem. But if it seems to run and drive fine and it's just not moving for whatever reason, then let's figure that out.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to offer you today some side by side so that you can make a judgment. Should I wholesale? Should I finance? Should I reduce the down payment? Obviously, if you were going to reduce the down payment, you would adjust these numbers that we have in there. This model assumes that it finances the same as your other car.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say too that part of the moral of the story is that the old adage, there's a but for every seat, is simply not true.
Well, I would say, honey, that it's true, but the question is, what is it going to cost you?
What's it going to cost you to wait for? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, and I've seen places where inventory has been sitting there for a year.
Yeah.
And they certainly haven't been able to find that butt for that seat yet. So
and some of you folks up north have shoveled snow off of that car so many times. And
changed the battery more than once, maybe.
Right. It's like, just there's so much value to fresh inventory, which is hard to measure and hard to explain. But for today, we just wanted to give you some more information. This kind of information, gosh, I wish I'd have had this when I was a dealer.
Oh, yeah.
I remember working through this
because you're trying to go off of a gut thing, and it's like this was numbers drawn out, so it's like this is where you this based on the certain assumptions. And so if you want to take a look at those assumptions again, if you want to kind of look at some of the things that the different pieces that Jim was measuring throughout this on this spreadsheet, and I like I said, Jim loves to geek out on this kind of stuff. Get on YouTube and take a peek and stop the video so you can like really soak in some of the different pieces that he looked at. But I have to say, Jim was even kind of surprised.
I was. I certainly was. I had my own ideas about what this was going to look like, and it surprised me. I definitely would have expected the wholesale to result differently. So it's all good stuff. I mean, we all learn when we actually put it on paper and run through the math. And so this was my opportunity to do that for you. Hope it helped.
I love it. Love it when my husband geeks out on spreadsheets, and there's like a whole segment of this industry that's just like, you're speaking my language and it's fun, but hopefully everyone learns something a little bit, and that it'll help you with deciding what you want to do with your aged units. So hope you guys have a great Monday. Happy Monday.
Yeah. Have a good week.
And we will see you guys on Wednesday for White Hat Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Appreciate it.